Stars shimmered beyond the hull of the Varric Dominance, a crescent-shaped command vessel, orbiting Earth like a predator, circling a wounded animal. Inside its obsidian walls, Overlord Kezer stood with arms clasped behind his back, his 6 crimson eyes narrowing as rotating tactical feeds shimmered across the hollow grid before him. Earth, a blue-green sphere wrapped in storm and shadow. He scoffed. They nest in vines and mold, Kezer sneered, addressing his officers without turning. Primitive terrain. Mud. Wet. No symmetry. No honor. Commander Vreel, a silver-plated Adretian, shifted uncomfortably. We have limited sensor penetration in their equatorial sectors. Dense biomass. Biomass. Kezer cut him off. Fungus, trees, and creatures too stupid to leave the rain. Their cities are few, scattered, and already crumbling under orbital suppression. There is nothing left but nature, and nature bends. A low growl rumbled from a subordinate, one of the Corran enforcers bristling in armored bulk near the rear of the chamber. Kezer waved a clawed hand. Let them breathe their last in their sacred jungle. Deploy a cleansing team. Let us see how long they play Leaf War with plasma. As the officers dispersed, the Overlord tapped the comm rune embedded in his forearm. Field General Trask, he growled. Your battalion is to enter Sector 9 Gamma. Old planetary name, Amazonia. Wipe it clean. Trask's reply buzzed with static confidence. As you command. I will send you a cage of human rebels wrapped in liana. Kezer allowed a thin smile. The war was already won. The Velthar Ascendancy had consumed over 47 star systems. Earth was just the latest. Resistance had been trivial so far. Patchwork armies, panic governments, a laughable attempt at cyber warfare. Now it was a matter of terrain sweep. His kind, evolved over millennia of conquest, would not be denied by soil and mist. Below, the jungle watched in silence. Drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, searing across the clouds like falling daggers. In the cockpit of one, Lieutenant Mex adjusted his visual interface, cycling through spectrums, infrared, thermal, sonic. All showed noise. Too much heat, too many moving heat signatures. These readings are useless, he muttered. The trooper beside him, encased in emerald exoplating, chuckled. Just crush whatever squirms. That's what the suits are for. They landed hard, crushing layers of foliage beneath gleaming steel. Trees groaned, birds scattered. 20 Velthar troops deployed across 100 meters of undergrowth. Their helmets hissed as internal filtration adjusted to the humidity. Their HUDs flickered with alien glyphs, biological density off charts, motion tracking inconsistent. Command, we are in, Mex reported. Visibility poor. Terrain obstructed. Beginning sweep. The first hour was quiet. Nothing but insects, chirps, the occasional flash of feathers. The jungle steamed with heat. Trees towered in cathedral-like arcs, roots gnarled into grotesque sculptures. The Velthar squad moved in tight formation, cutting paths with thermal blades, leaving smoking scars in their wake. Then one vanished. No sound, no cry, just gone. Mex froze. Trooper Dow. Static. He sent a drone. The feed showed only trees and then static. We lost another signal, he said. Could be terrain interference. Another scream, half-choked and glitched through audio filters, broke the silence. The unit spun around, weapons raised. Nothing. Only trees and a faint dripping sound. Form tight circle. Mex ordered, breath quickening. Deploy perimeter scans. No movement registered. Yet when they moved, something always changed. A vine that hadn't been there. A footprint that didn't match their boots. Whispers, soft and rhythmic, like language woven into leaf and wind. 3 more disappeared within minutes. One was seen for a moment, his helmet crushed inward like wet clay, his body dragged into the underbrush. Panic cracked the ranks. Retreat to landing beacon. Mex shouted, eyes wide. This zone is hostile. I repeat, hostile. But the beacon was already dead. In orbit, Kezer watched the squad's vitals flatline. No visuals. No audio. Nothing but silence. then jungle ambience filtering through for 3 seconds before the feed cut permanently. His jaw tightened. They sent scouts, not warriors. Send more. Hours later, a second team descended, heavier, reinforced. Mech support, aerial drones, terrain-clearing flombers. It didn't matter. The jungle swallowed them, too. Reports came through in fragments. Armor compromised, HUDs blinded, mechs lured into sinkholes. Screams. Always the screams. One final transmission showed a trooper weeping, blood seeping from his ears, speaking to something off-screen. She walks with the vines, he said. She sees us. She's in the trees. Static. Below, she did walk with the vines. Sergeant Reyna Morales, codename Ghost Cat, slid down a moss-covered trunk, silent as rain. Her skin was mottled with reactive pigment paint, shifting with the shadows. Her breath was steady, heart calm, mind clear. She whispered in her mic, barely audible, JF3 position. North Branch, Canopy Nest, came to reply. That was Juno, Sniper, Biomech Hybrid. JF2, buried in river silt. Got eyes. They're freaking out. Good. Reyna stepped over a crushed alien helmet, still dripping with condensation and brain matter. She tapped her wrist pad, sending a pulse to her squad. This war wasn't about weapons. It was about terrain, about trust, about becoming part of the world the enemy mocked. The jungle elite forces had been trained in silence, hidden from even their own governments until Earth's orbit fell. They didn't rely on satellites or drones. They used wind, water, pressure triggers, native predators. They had turned Earth's wilderness into a weapon. They had waited. Now they hunted. Further north, a Velthar flamethrower unit cleared a patch of jungle, torching everything in sight. Trees screamed with fire. Birds erupted from nests. Smoke rose like warning beacons. In the haze, Reyna moved with the flame's edge. A flick of her wrist. A small pod launched from her belt, an aerosolized alkaloid derived from local flowers. The fire turned, arcing backwards, licking the Velthar's suits. Their cooling systems shorted instantly. The trees retaliated with a burst of stored gases from within fire-hollow trunks, igniting in a chain reaction. The jungle didn't just burn. It exploded. Kezer, now pacing aboard the Varic Dominance, watched the reports with mounting rage. 32 troops lost. Mech walkers vanished. Drone footage showed only vines. Something was wrong. Why can't we see them, he growled. Because, came the voice of his intel officer, trembling slightly. They're not on our spectrum. Kezer's eyes narrowed. Meaning, they've modified their biological heat output. They mimic local fauna. They're part of the terrain. Silence. Then burn the terrain. The Overlord's fist slammed a command rune. Below, orbital fire cleared 10 square kilometers in a single blast. Jungle turned to ash, a crater of smoke yawning in the earth. Kezer stood tall again. But then, a single new signal appeared in the dead zone. One Velthar camera drone, damaged, floating sideways, captured a shape in the smoke. A figure walked from the edge of the blast, calm, unharmed. Humanoid, masked in green. She knelt beside a scorched tree, pressed her hand to the bark. The camera zoomed in. Her lips moved, and the jungle bloomed again. Vines uncoiled from beneath the ash. Roots heaved upward, stone cracked, and green shot skyward like rebirth. In moments, the forest began to heal, impossibly fast. Then the drone feed went black. Kezer stood frozen. Reyna Morales opened her comms to her unit. They think this is their world now. She looked up, skyward, voice low, steady. Let's remind them. The jungle responded with a hush and then a growl. Rain whispered through the canopy, sliding from leaf to leaf like nervous fingers. Beneath that endless green sky, Sergeant Reyna Morales crouched beside a knot of gnarled roots, eyes scanning the shifting foliage. Mud clung to her arms like a second skin, her face masked in layered pigment that shimmered with the filtered light. Her breath was slow, measured, attuned to the pulse of the jungle. Her fingers brushed the soil near the root base. A faint vibration. The clay had been disturbed recently. She pressed her palm into the earth and whispered, 2 feet. Heavy, not ours. A voice crackled in her ear, tight with restrained amusement. Want me to take the shot, Ghost Cat? Negative, Juno. Let them come in. From her perch, 50 feet up, Juno nestled her rifle against a twisted branch. Her eye implant adjusted to the breeze, recalibrating focus for the scatter of heat signatures below. She exhaled. Looks like another squad. Heavier gear this time. They're learning. No, Reyna murmured. They're reacting. She tapped the vine coiled around her wrist. The pressure sent a soft signal underground, rippling along a shallow fungal mat that had grown between the trees over the past month. It reached one of the spore traps, primed and waiting beneath the leaf litter. Below, the Velthar patrol moved in deliberate formation. Their armor gleamed wetly, powered by internal batteries and laced with sensors. Their pace was slow, cautious now. After the last two teams vanished, they had begun marching with drones in tow and aerial overwatch. Still useless. As they crossed a seemingly cleared path, one of the soldiers paused. His visor flickered. The readings were inconsistent. Temperature spikes, strange chemical traces in the air. He raised his hand. The spores ignited. A silent bloom of ultraviolet flame engulfed him. Not heat, not fire, just blinding light and molecular disassembly. His armor collapsed in on itself, empty, as though he had never existed. The others spun in panic, shouting, weapons raised, but the jungle had returned to stillness. They still don't understand, Juno said softly. They won't, Reyna replied. This isn't a battlefield. It's an ecosystem. Further west, along a stream veiled in morning mist, Sergeant Dunn Cole emerged from beneath the surface, breath held, rifle shielded in a waterproof sleeve. His body was cloaked in river silt and frog skin nanofiber, his presence reduced to a trickle in the stream's flow. He watched as a Velthar scout waded upstream, scanning for signs of life. Dunn moved with fluid efficiency. A step, a twist, and the alien's breathing tube was severed. A small splash, then silence. He pulled the body under and let the stream take it. In the JF's command hollow, a camouflaged nest built beneath a rotting trunk, Corporal Yin was watching live feeds as data flickered across cracked tablets. No satellites, no orbitals, just insect drones, pressure sensors, and coded plant responses. Everything filtered through the lens of Earth's own network. They're ramping up patrol frequency, Lien said. Heat scans suggest they're pulling in heavier walkers. Reyna leaned against the bark wall, rolling her shoulder. A scar along her bicep still twinged from the last close encounter. We let them. We push them deeper. The more metal they bring, the louder they get. And the easier they fall, Juno added, dropping into the hollow from above. She passed a strip of alien armor, melted at the edge, faintly humming with residual energy. Reyna took it, examined the edges, and nodded. We've mapped 70% of the jungle's natural circuits. Fungal networks, predator migration paths, water cycle choke points. It's not just a place, it's a system. We're not fighting in the jungle anymore. We're fighting as the jungle. Lien finished, pride slipping through her usual reserve. But even with the victories, the pressure grew. The Velthar were relentless, methodical. They had begun terraforming other parts of the planet, turning deserts into metallic grids, oceans into extraction vats. The jungle remained a thorn they couldn't extract, and now their wrath gathered at its edge. We have 20 hours, Reyna said. Maybe less before they roll their shock crawlers through. Dunn returned, dripping but composed. I say we welcome them. Collapse the eastern basin. Cut their route. Bait them into the mangroves. Reyna looked at him, thoughtful. You think we can hold the floodgate that long? If Lien times the heat dispersal nodes with the rain cycle, yeah. The storm front's already swelling. We'll need a distraction, Juno offered. Something bold. Let them see us. Make them chase. Reyna nodded, slowly. Okay, we play ghost until we turn solid. One strike, then disappear again. Each team member understood their part. There was no room for uncertainty, no tolerance for ego. The jungle had stripped them of that long ago. Night fell like a curtain soaked in ink. The Velthar launched their crawlers, hulking machines that grunted across the terrain, crushing foliage beneath spidered legs. Mounted lights scanned the forest floor. Drones hovered above, emitting bursts of sonar. Reyna watched from a high platform, her breath fogging against her mask. She leapt silently, landing in a net of vines, then swung down into the shallows. Nearby, Lien adjusted a charge planted within the roots of an ancient ceiba tree. It wasn't explosive, it was harmonic, a vibration calibrated to awaken the fungal web spanning a square kilometer. When the first crawler entered the basin, it paused, sensing the change. Its sensors pinged irregularities, moisture spikes, heat blooms. It recalculated course. Too late. The charge pulsed. Beneath the crawler, the ground softened. Water burst upward as the basin gave way, roots tearing like sinew. The crawler sank, limbs flailing, lights shorting. Its armor hissed under the acidic swamp bloom seeded days prior. Velthar troops panicked. Reyna emerged only long enough to be seen, barely more than a silhouette against the lightning-streaked canopy. They fired. She vanished. Floodgates released upstream. Water surged, not with violent force, but directed precision. Small channels overflowed, rerouting the flood across the Velthar's fallback route. Fire teams were separated. Mech slipped in mud. Drones collided in the chaos. It was not an ambush. It was erosion, slow, patient, absolute. In the confusion, Juno fired 3 shots, each one cracking through the roar like punctuation. Commanders fell. One staggered toward cover, only to meet Dunn in the reeds. A blade flashed. Silence followed. By dawn, the crawlers were gone, drowned or devoured by rot. The jungle exhaled mist over the wreckage. Reyna stood over the largest husk, one boot on the half-submerged cockpit. She opened a comm line, short range, wide broadcast. To the Velthar forces, she said clearly, "You do not belong here. This place breathes. It remembers. It resists. Every step you take is one closer to your own extinction." No response came. She stepped down, vanishing into the vines. Above, the jungle began to hum with life again. Parrots shrieked, insects chirred. Somewhere deeper in the forest, ancient drums, long buried, echoed faintly under the wind. The jungle had spoken. The enemy had listened. But they had not yet learned. Reyna looked westward. More were coming. Stronger, louder, angrier. The war was not over. It was only beginning. Rainfall drummed on alien hulls like ritual percussion, rhythmic and relentless. Captain Slorak stood at the edge of the destroyed crawler basin, his claws flexing against the handle of his pulse rifle. Around him, the air reeked of chemical decay and rotting vegetation. The remnants of 3 armored vehicles lay half-submerged in water, wrapped in vines that shouldn't have grown so quickly. His soldiers, what remained of them, stood rigid, eyes flicking nervously through their visors. They weren't watching for enemies anymore. They were watching the trees. He tapped his comm. "Command, we've recovered 0 hostiles. Multiple units missing. Crawlers lost. This sector is compromised, awaiting retasking orders." A moment passed, then another. Static. He clicked the comm again. Nothing. "Captain," one of the troopers whispered. "We just got a ping from command 30 seconds ago." Slorak turned slowly. And now, dead silence. He scanned the canopy. The sky was visible in places, but the clouds churned with heat and water and something thicker. Spores, perhaps, or debris. Communications were failing more often in these zones. Even the encrypted pulses from satellite relays. His visor flickered again. He removed the helmet, inhaled thick air, and regretted it. There was a taste to it now, metal, moss, and something sharp like ozone after lightning. They called Earth a fringe world, a green marble, nothing but overgrowth and decay, a cradle of life too chaotic to sustain advanced society. He had believed that once. Now he felt eyes in every shadow, even when his scanners showed none. "They're ghosts," one soldier muttered. "The humans. They walk with the trees." Slorak said nothing. He remembered the broadcast. A woman's voice, cold, calm, speaking in the tongue of the Ascendancy as if it were her own. Every step you take is one closer to your own extinction. It wasn't a threat. It had been a prophecy. Further east, deeper within the canopy where light rarely touched ground, Reina Morales crouched beside a fallen alien pod. The exoshell had been split by a series of root spears, precisely engineered and grown over weeks. The body inside was missing its helmet. Moss already crawled over the remains. She tapped a recording crystal on her forearm. Recovered armor fragment from Pod B, 19. Trap success. 0 survivors. She stood, brushing soil from her leg. Her movements were smooth, practiced. 2 weeks in this particular sector had reshaped the terrain under her unit's guidance. The traps weren't mechanical. They were alive, grown, seeded by knowledge passed down from the last defenders of Earth's wild zones and enhanced by JF synthesis engineers. She moved without noise, blending with the trees. Her presence wasn't marked by movement or heat, but by absence, of birdsong, of breeze. Nature responded to her. In a hidden alcove, Lien adjusted an interface embedded in bark. It pulsed with bioluminescent code, flickering with updates. She frowned. They're testing new frequencies, trying to pulse out our cloaks. Reina joined her. Response. I fed them feedback loops. They'll think they found us, but it's just heat signatures from the canopy. They'll waste time bombing squirrels. Good, Reina said. Let them burn shadows. High above, Juno balanced in the crook of a tree, glass-like rifle extended across a branch. Her augmented eye scanned the terrain. Alien scouts moved in triangle formation below, flanked by mini-drones trailing faint sensor webs. They crept forward, uncertain, mimicking patterns of human soldiers they had never encountered face-to-face. She adjusted her aim and exhaled. 3 soft clicks. 3 bodies crumpled in synchronized grace. She didn't smile. She didn't feel pride. Just necessity. Reina's voice came over the comm. They've begun cutting new paths. We'll divert them. Lien blinked at her display. What if we don't? Reina glanced up. They're pressing toward the temple route. That's too close to the array. Lien hesitated, then nodded. Miles away, Captain Slorak stared at a broken helmet clutched in his claws. The interior had been painted, not with pigment, but with symbols carved into the lining. Human symbols. Tribal. Circular, like maps or cycles. He turned it over. On the chin strap was etched a single word in Earth script. Home. He dropped it like it had burned him. Sir, a comms officer called. The central hive link has gone dark. No signal from the Varic dominance. Slorak's jaw twitched. Send a flare relay. Set the beacon tower. The trooper hesitated. Sir, if we light the beacon, they'll see us. We want them to see us now, Slorak muttered. We want to remind them we're still here. The beacon rose, a telescoping pillar pulled from their remaining crawler. At the top, a flare ignited, burning ultraviolet and humming with coded pulses meant to signal orbital support. It never finished broadcasting. Moments later, vines coiled around its stem, growing visibly in seconds. The flare dimmed. The hum choked. The tower cracked and collapsed into green silence. Slorak stared at the smoking base. We are being watched. Back in the canopy, Reina's unit moved in silence. The jungle was alive with warning. Birds fled west, insects vanished, and frogs went quiet. Reina signaled a halt. Her squad froze, crouched low. The ground trembled. A new sound cut through the forest, metal grinding, gears spinning. Something big was coming. She activated her ocular feed. An armored shape emerged through the brush. Massive, bipedal, pulsing with reactor heat. A warframe. Velthar's elite mechanized exosuits. It stepped through the forest like a colossus, carving a trail of destruction. Behind it followed squads of infantry, less cautious now. They believed this machine would protect them. Lien whispered, We don't have enough to stop that. Reina watched it for several seconds. Not with fire. She tapped her arm panel, input a code, then looked at the sky. A single pulse raced upward, invisible to most eyes. It activated a web seeded into the high canopy days ago. Mycelial sensors linked with old Earth tech. Dozens of fruiting bodies opened across a square mile, releasing clouds of microorganisms that latched onto metal, wiring, and synthetic muscle. The warframe's lights blinked, then dimmed. Steam hissed from its joints. Motors sputtered. The machine groaned, staggered sideways, then fell onto its side with a seismic thud. The soldiers behind it screamed, caught in the collapsing trees. Now, Rhaenys said. Juno's fire picked off the officers. Dunn burst from a hollowed log, blade drawn, cutting through armor like flesh. Lien dropped charges behind retreating troops, each blast directed to push them toward quicksand, not kill. It took less than 5 minutes. When it ended, the forest reclaimed the wreckage without a sound. Later, in their hidden base, Rhaenys stood before a moss-covered screen where intercepted transmissions glowed. Galactic channels were buzzing. Velthar Command, one said, confirm cessation of orbital operations over Earth. Losses unsustainable. Another voice followed. Sector 9 Gamma designated Red Class Death World. Contact prohibited. Juno leaned against a root, exhausted. So, they're leaving? Rhaena turned to her. They're retreating. Lien raised an eyebrow. Not surrendering. No, Rhaenys said. Not yet. She stepped outside into the fading light, the jungle bathed in gold and steam. Her eyes scanned the treetops, where birds now returned, cautious but curious. They think we're monsters, she whispered. They haven't even seen what the earth can do. The forest pulsed around her, breathing as one. The war wasn't over. It was evolving. The storm rolled in without warning. Sheets of water pounding the canopy, thunder cracking across the sky like artillery fire. From the edge of a rotting ridge, Rhaena Morales stood beneath the downpour, eyes fixed on the clearing below where the last Velthar dropship sat waiting, its engines whining with anxious urgency. The retreat had begun. Velthar's soldiers moved like shadows under strobing lights, their lines broken, their posture uncertain. Scattered platoons staggered through the mire, dragging wounded and weapons alike. What had begun as an occupation now resembled an exodus. They were no longer conquerors. They were survivors. Rhaena lowered her scope. Her fingers tapped a silent signal into the bark beside her, activating a synchronized countdown. Her team had moved into position an hour before the first dropship broke through the clouds. Every root, every fallen tree, every seeming patch of undisturbed jungle held a purpose now. Beneath her, Dunn crouched beside a jagged crag, his machete wet with rain and blood. His breathing was steady, eyes locked on a patrol attempting to secure the ship's perimeter. They're frantic, he whispered into his comm. Their formations are garbage. They're scared. They should be. Juno's voice came from overhead, nestled deep within the branches. They're bleeding tech into the soil and watching it vanish. They're not just retreating, Lien said, her voice tight with focus as she watched sensor data flicker across her forearm screen. They're scrubbing intel, killing their own tech so we can't trace it. Good, Rhaena replied. They're admitting defeat. Not out loud. They don't have to. Rhaena shifted her weight, rolling her shoulders beneath the slick camouflage layer that clung to her like a second skin. Beneath her boots, the jungle hummed. She could feel it through the soles, root pressure adjusting, fungal blooms releasing microscopic codes, signaling readiness. They'd spent months embedding themselves into the land, not merely hiding, but merging. Now, the jungle itself was aware of movement. The enemy thought in terms of geography. They never considered Earth might think back. A hornet-like drone buzzed across the clearing, scanning for targets. It paused midair, jittered, then dropped like a stone, its sensors blinded by spores. Rhaena didn't flinch. They'd disabled hundreds that way. She raised a hand, signaling the strike. Dunn moved first, a blur of motion and soil, his blade sliding into an officer's throat as another soldier reached for an alert rune. Juno's rifle barked once, twice, two more down before their bodies hit the mud. Panic flared. The Velthar opened fire into the trees, blind, erratic. Lien unleashed a pulse from her satchel. Invisible to the eye, it triggered the dormant mycelium net beneath the landing zone. In seconds, The soil liquefied. Screams rose as soldiers were sucked into mud thick with tendrils and unseen life. The jungle wasn't just hostile, it was hungry. The dropship's engine screamed, lifting unsteadily. Juno tracked it through her scope, adjusted for wind, then fired. The shot pierced the rear engine just as it rose above the treetops. The ship veered, faltered, and clipped the canopy. Metal met ancient wood in a deafening collision. The jungle surged upward to swallow it whole. Silence followed. Not the silence of peace, but of aftershock. The Velthar were gone. Reyna stood and descended, boots sinking softly into mud. Her team emerged like ghosts from the undergrowth. No orders were needed. They moved as one. At the wreckage, fires sputtered weakly beneath layers of wet leaves and bent metal. A hatch hissed open. Overlord Kezer pulled himself from the ruin, one arm broken, his elegant armor now charred and crawling with vines. Reyna approached slowly. She removed her mask, revealing the calm precision of her expression, eyes sharp, unyielding. Kezer looked up at her, blood trailing from the corner of his mouth. "What are you?" he rasped. She crouched beside him, voice low. "You called us savages, animals in the dirt. But you were wrong. We're the ones who remembered how to live with our world. You forgot." He coughed, tried to reach for something on his belt. A stun charge, perhaps. Reyna didn't stop him. He gripped it with trembling fingers, but it wouldn't activate. The jungle had soaked it with moisture, shorted it. She stood. "You came here thinking this was another campaign," she said. "A wilderness to burn. A planet to stamp with your boots and brands. But this isn't your world, and it never will be." Kezer tried to speak, but vines had already begun coiling around his limbs, gently at first. He struggled. They tightened. "We don't kill prisoners," Reyna added, her voice hardening. "We let the earth decide." She turned and walked away as the jungle crept over him. Later, in the re-established JF Command Grove, beneath the natural lattice of twisted wood and living circuitry, Lien broadcast a final encrypted signal. It hijacked remnants of the Velthar's long-range comnet, now barely functional. Across dozens of systems, Ascendancy outposts received a new classification update. Earth, Class Red, Active, Status, Unsuitable for Conquest, Recommended. Avoidance, Known Native Hostiles. Planetary Integration Unit, Human. On a distant mining moon, a Velthar tactician read the report and frowned. What does planetary integration mean? No one answered. Back on Earth, the jungle breathed deeply. Rains returned, but the scars of war healed quickly. Ruined mechs had become trellises for vines. Dropship husks sheltered nesting birds. Alien tech melted into the soil, becoming nutrients for something older, deeper. Reyna sat alone by the fire pit carved into stone. It had once been a ceremonial site for an indigenous tribe long vanished, or perhaps simply hidden. She tapped a crystal recorder, her voice steady. "Debrief, Morales, Reyna. Jungle Elite Forces, Unit 1. Final operation complete. Enemy ground presence eliminated. Orbital forces withdrawn or neutralized. Earth's sovereignty restored. Not by treaty, not by politics, but by consequence." She paused. "They came to erase what they didn't understand. We made sure they couldn't forget it." Juno approached from the shadows, dropping a fresh water gourd beside her. "Lien says the canopy stabilized. Wildlife's moving back in." "Good." Juno sat beside her, quiet for a while. "Do you think they'll come back?" "They always come back," Reyna said. "But next time they won't land." Dunn appeared, arms crossed, silhouetted by the flickering light. "Then we make the skies just as dangerous as the ground." Reyna looked at them. Each one changed, hardened by what they'd done and what they'd become. Not just soldiers, guardians, symbiotes of the land they swore to protect. She leaned back, letting the jungle's sounds return. Frogs croaking, leaves rustling, a panther's distant growl. Not a world tamed, but a world acknowledged. "They thought we were wild," she said softly. They had no idea how right they were. Above them, stars pierced through clouds. Beyond those stars, messages spread, warnings, myths, whispers in alien tongues of a green planet where technology failed, where soldiers vanished, and where even the bravest armies dared not tread. And at the heart of it all, the jungle waited, alive, aware, and watching.